The human mind is a labyrinth, a sprawling network of shadows and light where the conscious self dances with unseen forces. Two towering figures, Carl Jung and Friedrich Nietzsche, dared to plumb its depths, each in their own way peeling back the layers of what we call the unconscious. Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist, saw it as a vast reservoir of archetypes and collective wisdom, a place where the individual connects to the eternal. Nietzsche, the German philosopher, approached it as a chaotic abyss, a breeding ground for both creation and destruction. Together, their ideas form a compelling dialogue about what lies beneath the surface of our thoughts, a conversation that resonates even today as we grapple with the mysteries of the self. This script is not just an exploration of their theories, but an invitation to wander through the caverns of the psyche they illuminated. What makes their work so gripping is not merely its intellectual weight, but its visceral pull. Both men lived their ideas, wrestling with the unconscious in ways that were as personal as they were profound. Jung's conception of the unconscious was revolutionary for its time. Unlike Freud, who saw it as a dumping ground for repressed desires, Jung envisioned a dual-layered realm, the personal unconscious, filled with forgotten memories and suppressed experiences, and the collective unconscious, a deeper stratum shared by all humanity. This collective layer, he argued, is populated by archetypes, universal patterns like the hero, the shadow, or the wise old man, that shape our dreams, myths, and behaviors. Imagine it as an ancient ocean, its currents flowing through every culture and epoch, whispering truths we've long forgotten. Jung didn't just theorize this, he experienced it. His descent into his own unconscious, documented in The Red Book, was a psychedelic odyssey of visions and dialogues with inner figures. He believed that confronting these depths was essential for individuation, the process of becoming whole. For Jung, the unconscious wasn't a problem to be solved, but a partner to be embraced, a source of creativity and meaning that could heal a fragmented soul. Nietzsche, by contrast, approached the unconscious with a different temperament. He didn't name it as explicitly as Jung, but it pulses through his writings like a subterranean river. For him, it was the domain of the Dionysian, a primal, ecstatic force of life that contrasts with the orderly Apollonian impulse. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche describes the human spirit as a battleground where these forces clash, where the rational mind grapples with the wild, untamed energies beneath. He saw the unconscious as a crucible of power, the raw material from which the Übermensch, or Overman, could forge a new existence. Unlike Jung's therapeutic optimism, Nietzsche's vision was existential and fierce. He urged us to stare into the abyss, knowing it stares back. His own life mirrored this struggle. His descent into madness in 1889 suggests he may have peered too deeply. Yet his insistence that we embrace the chaos of the unconscious, rather than flee it, remains a provocative challenge to modern psychology. What unites Jung and Nietzsche is their recognition of the unconscious as a living entity, not a static vault. For Jung, it speaks through symbols and dreams, offering glimpses of a reality beyond the ego. He once said, "The dream is a little hidden door in the innermost and most secret recesses of the soul." Picture a dreamer lost in a forest of archetypes, each tree a story older than time. Nietzsche, meanwhile, heard its voice in the roar of instinct and the clash of values. His famous proclamation, "God is dead," wasn't just a theological jab, but a psychological earthquake, exposing the unconscious forces that rush in when old certainties crumble. Both men understood that ignoring these depths leaves us half alive, tethered to a surface existence that denies the richness below. Their work compels us to ask, what are we afraid to find in our own shadows? Jung's method of engaging the unconscious was active imagination, a technique where one dialogues with inner figures as if they were real. He'd sit quietly, letting visions unfold, then converse with the characters that emerged. In The Red Book, he meets Philemon, a winged sage who becomes his guide through the psychic wilderness. This wasn't mere fantasy. Jung saw it as a way to bridge the conscious and unconscious, to let the soul speak. It's a practice that demands courage. Imagine facing your own demons or gods, not as abstractions, but as presences with voices and wills. Jung believed this confrontation could reveal truths the rational mind obscures, truths about who we are and what we might become. His patients, too, found healing in this dialogue, unearthing buried parts of themselves that had long been silenced. It's a stark contrast to Nietzsche's approach, yet the goal aligns, to integrate the unseen into the seen. Nietzsche didn't offer a method so much as a provocation. His Zarathustra descends from the mountain to preach a gospel of self-overcoming, urging humanity to dive into the unconscious and emerge transformed. He saw the modern world as sick, weakened by centuries of denying its instincts in favor of reason and morality. The unconscious, for him, was where life's vitality festered, untamed, dangerous, and beautiful. In The Birth of Tragedy, he celebrates the Dionysian festivals of ancient Greece, where people surrendered to music, dance, and intoxication, dissolving the ego in a collective frenzy. This wasn't escapism, but a return to the source, a way to feel the pulse of existence. Nietzsche's challenge was to harness this energy without being consumed by it, a tightrope walk he himself couldn't always manage. His collapse after seeing a horse flogged in Turin hints at the toll of such a dance with the abyss. Jung's archetypes and Nietzsche's Dionysian spirit intersect in fascinating ways. Take the shadow, one of Jung's most compelling concepts. The dark, rejected side of the self we pretend doesn't exist. It's the anger we suppress, the desires we deny, the flaws we project onto others. Jung insisted we must face it, integrate it, lest it control us from below. Nietzsche would nod in agreement, though he'd frame it differently, perhaps as the Dionysian chaos we must embrace to transcend mediocrity. Both saw the unconscious as a mirror, reflecting not just personal failings but universal struggles. The shadow isn't just yours or mine, it's humanity's, etched into myths of monsters and fallen heroes. Jung explored this through analysis, Nietzsche through art and aphorism, yet their message converges. To live fully, we must reckon with what we've buried. The collective unconscious, Jung's grandest idea, stretches this mirror across time. He argued that our minds inherit patterns from our ancestors, a psychic DNA linking us to the past. When we dream of serpents or floods, we're not just processing last week's stress. We're tapping into symbols that haunted campfires millennia ago. Nietzsche didn't use the term, but his reverence for myth and tragedy suggests a kindred intuition. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he reimagines ancient motifs, prophets, eagles, serpents, not as relics but as living forces. For him, the unconscious wasn't a museum, but a forge, where old instincts could smelt new values. Jung's patients often stumbled into these archetypes unawares, their dreams echoing tales they'd never read. Nietzsche's readers, meanwhile, feel the weight of history in his prose, as if he's channeling voices from beyond. One of Jung's most striking encounters with the unconscious came during World War I, when he dreamt of a flood drowning Europe. This wasn't a personal nightmare, but a collective omen, a vision he later tied to the war's carnage. He saw the unconscious as prophetic, a seer peering through time's veil. Nietzsche, too, sensed the tremors of a coming upheaval. His God is dead wasn't a boast, but a warning of a world unmoored. Both men intuited that the unconscious doesn't just hold the past, it glimpses the future, whispering possibilities we ignore at our peril. Jung's flood dream wasn't unique. His patients reported similar visions, as if the collective psyche was groaning under modernity's weight. Nietzsche's Zarathustra rails against the same modernity, calling for a return to primal depths to birth something new. Their differences, though, are as telling as their similarities. Jung was a healer, a scientist of the soul who sought balance. His individuation process is a journey toward harmony, where the unconscious becomes a partner in self-discovery. Nietzsche was a warrior, a poet of upheaval who prized struggle over peace. His Übermensch isn't balanced but defiant, a figure who conquers the unconscious to create beyond good and evil. Jung might sit with Philemon to understand. Nietzsche would wrestle him to assert will. Yet both recognize the unconscious as the root of transformation. Jung's patients emerged from analysis more whole. Nietzsche's readers, if they dared, emerged more alive. The contrast mirrors psychology's own tension. Do we tame the unconscious or unleash it, heal it or wield it? Jung's descent into the Red Book offers a vivid tableau of this dance. For years, he plunged into his visions, painting, writing, arguing with phantoms, emerging with a map of the psyche's wilds. It's a text that feels Nietzschean in its intensity, alive with the clash of light and dark. He meets Salome, a blind seductress, and Elijah, a stern prophet, each a fragment of his soul. These weren't idle fantasies but excavations, a psychologist's attempt to live what he preached. Nietzsche's Zarathustra, too, is a visionary figure, roaming a landscape of peaks and abysses, speaking in riddles that demand we join him. Or we both works pulse with the unconscious, Jung's as a structured myth, Nietzsche's as a primal cry. They invite us not just to think, but to feel the weight of what lies beneath. The unconscious for Jung was a source of renewal. He saw modern life as a desert of disconnection, where people had lost touch with their roots. Religion once bridged this gap, its rituals and symbols dipping into the collective unconscious. But as faith waned, he feared we'd become hollow, adrift without anchors. His solution was to reclaim these depths through analysis, art, and myth, tools to fish meaning from the void. Nietzsche saw the same desert, but welcomed its harshness. The death of God was a liberation, a chance to forge new gods from the unconscious's fire. Where Jung built bridges, Nietzsche burned them, trusting we'd learn to swim. Their diagnoses align, a civilization starved of depth. But their prescriptions diverge, offering a spectrum of responses to the human condition. Consider the role of dreams, a realm where both found the unconscious at play. Jung treated them as sacred texts, riddles to decipher with patience. A dream of flying might signal the hero's ascent, a dark cave, the shadow's lair. He'd ask, "What does this mean to you?" drawing the dreamer into the mystery. Nietzsche didn't analyze dreams so much as embody them. His writing feels dreamlike, surging with images that defy logic yet strike the soul. Zarathustra's visions of eternal recurrence, of the tightrope walker's fall, aren't meant to be solved but lived. For Jung, dreams were a conversation, for Nietzsche, a revelation. Yet both saw them as windows into a truth deeper than waking life, a truth psychology still chases. The shadow looms large in this interplay, a concept both men circled in their own ways. Jung's shadow is personal yet universal, the flip side of our polished selves. It's the rage that flares unexpectedly, the envy we mask with smiles. He urged us to own it, not to banish it, but to weave it into our being. Nietzsche's Dionysian force is his kin, a wildness that refuses taming. He'd scorn Jung's measured integration, demanding instead that we revel in it, let it fuel our ascent. Picture a man standing before a mirror. Jung whispers, "Understand this reflection." Nietzsche shouts, "Become it." Their duet is psychology's heartbeat, control versus chaos, reflection versus action. The shadow in both is where growth begins. Jung's collective unconscious ties us to humanity's story, a thread Nietzsche also grasped. Jung saw it in the myths we retell, Odysseus, Christ, the trickster god, each an archetype echoing through time. Nietzsche saw it in tragedy, where the chorus chants humanity's pain and joy. Both believe these patterns shape us, whether we know it or not. Jung's patients found peace in recognizing this continuity. Nietzsche's readers, a call to break it and build anew. The unconscious, then, is both a cradle and a forge, a place of origin and possibility. It's why their ideas endure. They speak to our longing for roots and our hunger for wings. Their personal lives amplify this exploration. Jung's midlife crisis birthed The Red Book, a testament to his willingness to risk sanity for insight. He emerged stronger, his theories tempered by experience. Nietzsche's collapse ended his voice, but not his legacy. His madness was perhaps the price of his genius. Both paid dearly to chart the unconscious, proving it's no abstract concept but a force that can break or make us. Jung's stability let him systematize what he found. Nietzsche's volatility let him sing it. Together they map a terrain we all navigate, whether in therapy or solitude. Their lives remind us the unconscious isn't theoretical, it's alive, and it demands reckoning. Modern psychology owes them both. Jung's influence ripples through therapy, from dream analysis to personality types. His archetypes inform how we understand identity, bridging science and myth. Nietzsche's shadow falls on existential psychology, challenging us to face life's absurdity with courage. Neither fit neatly into today's empirical mold. Jung's mysticism and Nietzsche's bombast defy reduction, but their ideas persist because they touch something raw. The unconscious remains psychology's frontier, a space where data meets mystery. Jung and Nietzsche didn't solve it. They opened it, daring us to step inside. Their legacy is less a conclusion than a question. What will you do with the depths? Their visions clash, yet complement, like two sides of a coin. Jung offers a path to wholeness, a lantern for the dark. Nietzsche offers a leap into the unknown, a torch to set it ablaze. Both reject a life half-lived, a psyche half-seen. The unconscious in their hands becomes a stage where humanity plays out its drama. Creation, destruction, and everything between. Jung's patient introspection and Nietzsche's fierce exuberance together paint a fuller picture of the mind's underbelly. They teach us that the unconscious isn't a foe to conquer, but a frontier to explore, a realm where we meet ourselves in all our complexity. It's a lesson psychology still learns, one patient, one dream at a time. Imagine stepping into that realm yourself. Jung would hand you a journal, urge you to sketch your dreams, to ask the figures within what they want. Nietzsche would thrust you onto a cliff, demand you leap and trust your wings. Both would insist you return change. The unconscious, they'd argue, isn't a distant land, but here, now, in every unspoken thought, every restless night. Jung and Nietzsche didn't just theorize, they lived it, and they beckon us to follow. This script isn't their final word, but a spark, an echo of their call to dive deep. The depths await, as they always have, whispering truths we're only beginning to hear.